Hi, and welcome back to my Christian YouTube channel in 2026 it is. You'll notice if you have a look on all my platforms, I've introduced a new photography channel as well, and I've updated all the links to all my different blogs and YouTube channels and whatever. So have a look at the links on this channel, and please feel free to browse around and look at all my other interests and things, not only to do with Christian things but all sorts of other things as well. So I'm going to do a book review today. I've got a favourite bookshop not far from here, a second-hand bookshop, and I picked up a book just recently, this one here by George Foreman, God in My Corner. You might have a George Foreman grill. We've got one or somewhere, or I might have given it to my son, and they were very good. But I used to sort of loosely follow the boxing guys over the years, talking back to Cassius Clay, who became Muhammad Ali, and all those sort of guys. And George Foreman was one of those big names, and it was always interesting when you hear someone who's living a lifestyle which is not necessarily Christian at the time, who become Christians. George had a very interesting experience, and he explains it in the book how he, after a fight, he went back to the dressing room, and he believes he died and had a vision in that time, and that changed his whole lifestyle. And it's an absorbing story. I've never really been involved in boxing, but I did at one stage. A friend of mine's son was doing some boxing and amateur boxing in South Australia, and my friend said, why don't you go along and do some video? No one's doing any video there, because I was into doing video with my Canon XL1. So I did for about 4 different bouts during the year with the South Australian Amateur Boxing Association, and I found that very interesting. As a Christian, of course, I always am a bit ambivalent about why we would call that a sport, and why people should be so violent, and it's not very Christian. The Bible tells us, to run the good fight, but it doesn't say that means with your fists. However, God brings all sorts of people to him, no matter what their background is, and George Foreman was certainly one of those. It says, God in My Corner, a spiritual memoir. And so it's a really good book. I'd recommend you reading it, and that caused me, of course, to look up all of his fights on YouTube, which were quite interesting. But he certainly changed his tune after he became a Christian, but it didn't negate his ability in the boxing ring. And in fact, after a 10-year break, he came back and became the world heavyweight boxing champion again at the age of 45, I think, which was amazing. Excuse me, at the time. At the end of each chapter in this, and I'll try and find one of them, he gives you a little tip from his corner. Here's one, for instance, tips on from George's corner, because of course when you're in boxing you always retreat to the corner between each round, and at the end of each chapter he's got some tips from George's corner. And one of his things here, this is one, tips from George's corner on advancing through adversity. Trust God to control your situation. Look for something positive in your negative situation. Remember that trials come to pass. Think higher of yourself than your attackers are saying about you. And the next chapter following on from that was chapter 11, is integrity. Don't leave home without it. He's very big on forgiveness of all his enemies through this, and encouraging other people to do the same. And it's very heartwarming to hear that, because a lot of people who are Christians struggle with forgiving people who've wronged them, but he had no trouble in doing that. Although he said he did struggle a little bit, but he certainly was intent on doing that. Tips from George's corner on having integrity. Connect your heart with God's heart by drawing close to him. Prevent temptations by keeping the doors to compromise closed. Make a covenant with your eyes before temptation comes your way. There you go. I'll just read from the back cover, and then I'll sign off and just recommend that you If you want to, you might be able to find it online and buy a copy or read it online. And he gives his testimony online too on one of the YouTube channels, which is very an abbreviated version of what's in here. I'll just read this from you. Everyone needs a second chance, even if your name is George Foreman. This is George. My second chance arrived unexpectedly in a Puerto Rican dressing room after a heavyweight boxing match. What happened to me in that room is so incredibly bizarre. It's unlikely you've ever before read anything like it. Simply stated, I died and went to the other side. The experience impacted me so profoundly that 3 decades later, I can't go a single day without thinking about it. Of course, George passed on a few years ago now. A childhood in grinding poverty. This is someone else's comments. A childhood in grinding poverty. 2 heavyweight boxing championships, 20 years apart. A life-changing encounter with God. A new life devoted to ministry. An inspiring comeback, and then astounding success as an entrepreneur and trusted product pitchman. For the first time, George Foreman tells the whole story of his remarkable life, with the frankness, warmth and humour you'd expect from Foreman. He shares the faith journey that has shaped his life, offering many life lessons along the way. Questions here. What are the secrets to George Foreman's inspiring success? Why is he always smiling? Why did he name all 5 of his sons George? There's a good one. There is no one quite like George Foreman. God in My Corner explains why. More importantly, it will open your eyes to the reality that God is there in your corner, just as he's been there for George all these years. There are some nice photos of George's life in the middle, and his family and all that sort of stuff in the middle of the book as well. So there you go. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and I hope you find that interesting and maybe follow it up and be inspired by George Foreman. He actually became good friends with Muhammad Ali, apparently, even though he used to hate him before he was a Christian. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Like if you like, subscribe if you wish, and I'll see you in the next video. See you later.